Welcome into the Horseshoe, ladies and gentlemen. In the aftermath of Ohio State 49, Marshall 14, that's Andy Backstrom. The 41-year vet Tim May will be here shortly to break it all down. A slow, sluggish, sloppy start for the Ohio State defense, whatever other S words you want to use. I don't use the four-letter one, but some people were after a few drives for this Ohio State defense. Slow start for them. The offense, not so slow because they went one play and it was 7-7. Scored on every possession in the first half other than the pick by Will Howard, but I think that was a good aggressive mistake, if we're being honest, on a poor throw. So that's where we begin. 49-14, Andy, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, well, I asked Jordan Hancock after the game, what are these slow starts coming from for the defense? Because, yes, they've given up 20 total points over 3 games, but teams have been able to move the ball early in games on this Ohio State defense. Jordan Hancock said, well, teams are showing us different scheme than they have on film. And they're coming out the first drive. We're seeing different things than we have. It's taking us a minute to adjust. Then they go over to the iPads, they look at it, they adjust. And Jim Knowles' defenses over the years have proven to be able to do that pretty quickly, especially last year and this year. So they did do that, but they still gave up their first 2 touchdowns of the year. It was going to happen eventually, right? But I think a little bit alarming to see it happen on the first drive of the game against Marshall.
Yeah, and then the second touchdown drive was aided by the Caden Curry ejection for targeting. So some aid there on the second one. I thought the first one, inexcusable. The second one, I think you can kind of talk yourself into, okay, aided by penalties, started in good field position because of 3 bad kickoffs. They got one on us. But the first one I thought was pretty inexcusable for a team coming off the bye, trying to set the tone with 103,000 people here screaming, it's the most active they're going to be all game because they think it's going to be a blowout. You don't want to excuse it, and I'm not going to, but the way that they tightened up in the second half, Marshall got absolutely nothing. I was impressed with the adjustments, and I think that's, the calling card for Jim Knowles his entire career has been those adjustments. I thought he adjusted well. I thought this defense adjusted well, but you do not want to start games like that. And next week against Michigan State on the road, if you start like that, you're going to go down 7-0 on the road in a semi-hostile environment with a team with a first-year head coach who wants to, prove something in a top 5 matchup, or against a top 5 team. You're gonna have issues, and I don't think you can do that again next week.
Yeah, well, it really hurt Marshall that Stone Earl, their quarterback, their dual-threat quarterback, had to leave the game with an injury. And a lot of the defensive success in the second half came without Stone Earl at quarterback, and he was starting to spread that defense out in the first half.
Yeah.
It's an air raid offense, but it's also versatile with his ability to run the football. So I did think that that's going to be something to ask Jim Knowles about this week if we get him, asking about defending the dual threat quarterback, defending, an offense that spreads you out like that. Also, special teams were an issue today.
Yeah, special teams and defense were just
not
good.
Not the A game for Ohio State. I think special teams was probably more around a C.
Yeah.
You have 3 kickoffs go out of bounds from Jaden Fielding. Austin Snyder is then put in eventually to take over Jaden Fielding's spot in that position. Ryan Day said it's just unacceptable. You can't have 3 straight kickoffs like that. And then Brandon Innes really muffed a punt. They got lucky on. There was an illegal motion penalty that brought that back. So special teams, not a great day for that unit.
No. As we're going to bring Tim May, the 41-year vet, in like he's on the Merv Griffin show with Kramer. Tim.
Levels.
First thoughts, Tim, on Ohio State, Marshall, 49-14, yada, yada, yada.
It's really funny. This game went a little bit like I thought it would. I didn't think Marshall would score touchdowns. I picked them to kick 2 field goals, so I was right in the number of scores they had. But the point is, this was a better team than Western Michigan from a standpoint of potency on the offensive side of the ball. It's clear they benefited from playing 2 games earlier and having that off week, having installed this air raid offense, because Stone Earl, that's the quarterback's name, before he got knocked out of the game. Stone Earl seemed much more in control of what he was seeing, doing, and manipulating out there than he had the first 2 games, especially the game against Virginia Tech. So I expected this to present a little bit different challenge for the defense. Offensively, fellas, they ran 6 plays in the first quarter and led 14-7. Ohio State did. They ran 20 in the first half and led 28-14 at the half. I think that says it all. They ran 14 in the second quarter and 20 for the half and led 20. That just showed you what kind of a big play day it was for Ohio State. And anytime you see Emeka Egbuka score, you feel good for that guy, considering what he's all about. He hasn't had a 100-yard receiving game since the Georgia semifinal.
Yeah.
Ohio State almost stole down at the end of the 2022 season. So everything was clicking for the most part offensively, except for one pass. And sometimes you throw it up to your talented, big-time freshman wide receiver and let him go make a play.
Yeah, let's talk about that because so there's obviously some concern in the fan base, and justifiably so, I will say, about the deep ball with Will Howard because he underthrew the one to Jeremiah 2 weeks ago in the last time out against Western Michigan.
Right.
He then underthrew one to Jeremiah, which I don't think Jeremiah saw coming to the last minute, to be honest, or he might have lost in the sun. Something about that didn't look right.
It's like Brandon Ennis on that punt drop.
Yeah.
It looked like you lost it in the sun.
But I do think that if you're going to make a mistake like that and throw that pick, it's better to do it inside the 10-yard line in this kind of game. Take the shot to your best player, really, on offense, like the deep ball. Take that shot, and if something happens, it happens. And I know that that's not what everybody wants to hear. Will Howard wasn't going to go the whole season without throwing a pick. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so to get his first interception on that kind of mistake, I thought that was a good, aggressive mistake to make.
Yeah.
And one that you're not going to excuse by any stretch, but I think you're going to live with if you're Ryan Day.
Yeah.
Especially in a game where you feel like you can kind of name your score against this defense.
Yeah. And Jeremiah Smith, like you just pointed out, looked uncomfortable on that
play. Yeah.
Because
it was weird.
It's clearly, because usually I would give him the benefit there 95 times out of 100 to come down with a ball thrown like that. And so, you move on. You win 49-14. You haven't had a bad day offensively.
Yeah, Will Howard started the game against Western Michigan 10 of 10. He started this game 11 of 12. The one incompletion is the interception you guys just talked about.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It was completed, but
to the wrong team, right?
Yeah,
of course. So Will Howard
I'll just point that
continues, I think, to show what you would expect to see from him. Again, scores on the ground. They show the robust tee that I asked about. Tim, you asked a little bit about it as well. I think we're all impressed to see what Chip Kelly's doing offensively with the run-pass balance, but also some of the creative formations. Again, we saw heavy sets with the tight ends today. Yeah. And again, it continued to work. And I think that's going to be part of this identity for this offense, building through the run and then, playing off that with the pass. And we've seen how good Will Howard is with play action pass and getting the ball to his receivers in space. I felt like at the beginning of this game, they were just stretching the Marshall defense out with screens. And whether it's a screen or a slant, Will Howard doesn't need to do a ton. He just needs to get the ball in the hands of his receivers with an ability to run after the catch. So I thought this offense, for the most part, was really impressive. The running backs, Quinshon Judkins and TreVeyon Henderson, I think the last two games have proved that they are, in fact, the best running back tandem in the country, no doubt about it. They combined for 4 touchdowns against Western Michigan. They combined for 4 touchdowns today. And, TreVeyon Henderson only had 6 carries on the day, averaged over 12 yards per carry. Quinshon Judkins also averaged over 12 yards per carry. They could run for 300 yards if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's interesting because Will Howard continued to use the word explosive about this offense. I would use the word efficient because they had a one-play scoring drive. I think they had a 2-play scoring drive. They had a quick scoring drive. They had a drive where Will Howard kept the quarterback sneak, and it was really efficient. They ended up with, I believe, 49 points on 49 plays. If I'm wrong, then it's because they had a couple snaps late in the fourth quarter. I was making my way to the field. But it was almost a point per play, which is absurd. But you're also only running 49 plays. But you score 49 points. That's the hallmark of efficiency, is not needing a lot of time to get down the field. With Marshall's 2 scoring drives, both long scoring drives that required some plays. The first one, 13 plays, 75 yards. That's not efficient. That's just driving the football. Ohio State was as efficient as you can be on offense today.
Yeah, but they were as efficient because they were really explosive.
Yeah, they go hand in hand. And I'm gonna
like Emeka Egbuka, the 2 E's work really well together.
Well, they do work well together, and they work in tandem, and that's what I'm going to write about for LettermenRow.com here later on Saturday. But then we'll make our way back. We'll snake our way back here to close out the defense. Tim, we talked about it a little bit. Are there any concerns coming out of this defensively that you see? But I know, first of all, let's address this. It's freaking hot. This turf is really hot. And for Marshall, the first drive, no excuses whatsoever. 13 plays, 75 yards, can't happen. It can't happen. You guys set the tone at home and again, a non-conference game against an overmatched opponent. The second drive, though, after the 13 plays, Ohio State goes 1 play, 68 yards, and scores a touchdown. I think it was 68, maybe it was 70. But anyway, 1 play and scores a touchdown. You know what that does? It's great for the offense, great for the band that gets to play the fight song. The defense goes right back out on the field on this turf that was well over 100 degrees and still is. Trust me.
I got a roast cooking right back over there.
you could bake cookies on this thing. But as Tim May likes to say, the bottom line is the second drive and the third drive, it just looked like the defense was a little out of sorts. And I think there's, whether that's getting tired in the first quarter or what.
I think what would bother me if I was one of the coaches would be the fact that Marshall being able to get that touchdown just before half.
Yeah.
Because they didn't score on those other ones except for the first one. And so you got, instead of a 28-7 game, you got a 28-14 game. What I was extremely impressed by was it looked like Marshall had a pretty good plan, and they were implementing it.
Call it the Marshall plan, too.
That's what I called it, too. You must be eavesdropping. I think I called it to Anders over there. But the bottom line is,
there it is.
They scored 0 points in the second half. I don't think they had 50 yards total in the second half. That means you got some work done at halftime. It also aided the cause that Marshall's quarterback had to leave the game, and the young man came in for him, wasn't running anywhere near running the offense as efficiently, which changed the scope of that game also. But I really was impressed by the way the defense played in the second half, because it is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is a game of two halves.
It sure is. You're absolutely right, partner. Andy, before we get out of here, you touched on special teams. We've now touched offense, defense. Any other closing thoughts before we get out of here? You've always got something cooking in that brain.
2 closing thoughts
for
the line of scrimmage. One, Tyleik Williams is really important to this team, and not having him there, I think everyone felt that.
Day-to-day, as Ryan Day called it.
Yeah, he's day-to-day right now. Hero Kanu got a shot to start. I think he struggled a little bit, to be honest. He's, I think, a better player than maybe he showed in the early downs of this game. He'll get better, that's for sure. Tywone Malone got in there. Caden McDonald got in there. Jason Moore got in there. Larry Johnson was really using that rotation. We continue to see the Rushman package. So that full room is getting a lot of chances to play right now. But again, Tyleik Williams, I think his presence or lack thereof was felt today. On the offensive line, I think we need to mention Austin Saravelt alternated snaps with Tegris Shabola. He was in there and helped spring 2 touchdowns at right guard, and he's played left guard so far this year, starting the first 2 games in place of Donovan Jackson, who was back today.
Yeah.
Ryan Day said that they would still play Austin Saravelt. We didn't know what that would look like, and sometimes when coaches say that, you think maybe they're just saying that, and that means they'll get in late in the game when it's already handled. No, Austin Saravelt was in the game in the first half and was really important, I think, in springing some of those big runs. So that is definitely worth noting.
Real quick, Tim, I did ask Ryan Day about rotating Austin Saravelt and Tegris Shabola if he wanted that to be a fluid situation moving forward. He said they want both of them to play. Yeah. And so they're going to continue to do that as long as they can. And if they feel like they're gaining some momentum or it's hindering them, either of them getting in the flow of the game, they'll change that. But for right now, I think you're going to see those guys kind of alternate until they really lock down what they want to do there at right guard. But both of them, I thought, played pretty well.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're all right. I mean, that little flow, that little zone left where they ran basically, in essence, a counter or a draw. I think it was Quinshon Judkins, one of his touchdowns.
Yes.
That was a sight to behold, the way everybody got a block. I mean, they had a big-time moment, in my regard, from a highlight standpoint of the offensive line. I thought the offensive line, for the most part, played well in this game because Marshall was throwing a few gambits at them and things like that, and they handled it for the most part. A couple plays, everybody would like a couple plays back. But the bottom line is, I think, going into the start of conference play, I think they have found a pretty good offensive line for this football team. Compared to last year, I was never sold totally on that group for some reason. You know? And we all know what happened at the end of the year, the last 2 games. But the bottom line is, I think that is definitely an achievement for this group, because we went into preseason not even knowing who the right guard was going to be. I think they found 2 guys that can play right guard, maybe 3 if you count Carson Hinsman in there. And then it's good, from an Ohio State standpoint, to see Donovan Jackson back, because there were several plays today where he showed why he was a preseason All-American.
I completely agree with that. 2 final things from me. Pass rush, non-existent today for the most part. I do wonder, which we did not talk to Jim Knowles post-game. I believe we will talk to him on Tuesday. I do wonder if with the ability for the quarterback to run and a lot of quarterback draw, which we've seen a lot from Marshall this year, if that was part of the plan, even when they're passing, to kind of make sure he doesn't leave the pocket. So yeah. I do wonder about that, because that is not the pass rush that we've seen from the first 2 games. They were dominant. No opponent matter. in the first two games. It didn't matter who they were playing. This game, they didn't seem to be dominant, but they also didn't seem to be as urgent to get to the backfield. So maybe I'll ask Jim Knowles about that on Tuesday, get some clarity. The last thing, we had some technical issues up top in the clock tower after the game with our audio for Ryan Day's press conference. That was an Ohio State thing, not a Lettermen Row thing. It's been communicated to the proper guy. No need to send any emails to him. I took care of it. He works really hard, and it was just a little bit of a snafu.
Did he cut out that question I asked Will Howard?
We didn't get the question that you
Well,
asked.
I got to re-ask it, but I didn't realize I'd left out a word.
Yeah, it was probably the funniest moment in the history of press conferences at Ohio State. But I digress, as Tim May likes to say. We're going to get up to the booth and get started on all the post-game coverage you've come to know and love at lettermenrow.com. Tim May, the 41-year vet, Andy Backstrom, and me, Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com. We'll see you back here in the Horseshoe on Monday morning for the Monday after Ohio State 49, Marshall 14.